Greetings to Doctor and fellow friends. My name is Azfar bin AMRAN, and today me and my group will be discussing on a hot topic, which is the ethical issues that happened in medical sector. So today we addressed the silent crisis of systemic labor exploitation and wage theft that currently plagues the medical sector both locally and also globally. In Malaysia itself, this ethical struggles is defined by unfulfilled promises regarding on-call allowances and the normalization of unpaid overtime, which has deeply eroded professional trust and accountability. This local reality mirrors a global pattern of hidden work, seen in nations like the United Kingdom, where resident doctors face significant real-term pay cuts and frequent strikes. Ultimately, these ethical failures create a toxic culture of burnout that threatens patient safety worldwide, requiring us to apply principles of justice and fairness to ensure the sustainability of our healthcare systems. By that, throughout our research, we have found out three main problem statements that plays a big role and also affect directly into the unethical issues that happened in medical sector for both locally and also globally. And the first one will be systemic exploitation through wage theft. And the second one will be mandatory unpaid overtime. And the last one will be violating the fundamental rights of medical professionals. So why does these three problems occurred? Stay with us, we will explain more after this. So the first one will be systemic exploitation through wage theft. Behind the sanctuary of hospital walls, systemic wage theft devalues essential medical labor, whereby institutions frequently fail to compensate doctors for passive on-call hours and also a vital weekend rounds. This exploitation strips professionals of wages earned through their energy, skills, and time. It remains a silent crisis undermining the backbone. While for the mandatory unpaid overtime normalized as hidden work, whereby it has become a toxic institutional standard. This reliance on uncompensated labor fuels with widespread worker burnout and exhaustion across global healthcare. What was once dedicated service is now a systemic burden that threatens staff loyalty and the long-term sustainability of medical services. And the next one will be violating the fundamental rights of medical professionals, whereby a systemic exploitation through unfair labor practices directly violates the fundamental rights of doctors. By treating essential workers as slaves to corruption, institutions create a toxic environment. This ethical failure triggers mass resignations and severe mental distress. Such disregard for professionality and integrity ultimately jeopardizes patient safety and also the national welfare. Have you ever wondered why we even choose this topic at the first place? This is because the health sector, as we all know, is a fundamental to national well-being, but systemic ethical challenges now threaten workforce stability. By that, this study investigates widespread wage theft and non-compensation for essential labor, such as unpaid on-call duties in Malaysia. Not only that, these exploitative practices represent a global crisis of hidden work across the United Kingdom and around the Asia. Such environments lead to severe burnout and clinical errors. It will jeopardizing the patient safety, which is us, a normal human being who desperately needs medical institutions for the sake of our life. To make it more clear and to have a bright and broad explanation, I'll pass to my friend to present about what happened or what ethical issues that happened in the local medical sector. That's all from me. See you next time.
Now we are moving on to the next section, which is the local ethical issues in the medical sector. The ethical issues in the medical sectors can be seen in the issues that brought up the doctors on co-pay allowance. Has become a big issue for the doctors and also nurses in the public sectors, because the parity between the reality and the promise of the ministries of health regarding the allowance. All of these issues was brought up by the cases in the article entitled Empty Promises and the Betrayal of Doctors. Now we are moving on to the next section, which is the local ethical issues in the medical sector. Ethical issues can be analysed by going through the chronological events in this. These issues has started from the budget 2025 that was announced by our Prime Minister. There is an increasement in the on-call duty allowance at medical facilities from 55 ringgit to 65 ringgit. This sounds like a big increasement for the doctors and also the workers in the public medical facility and medical sectors. But if we divide it into hourly rate, it's only raised almost like 1 ringgit from 916 ringgit to 10 ringgit. This brought up the ethical issues of the compensation fairness and also the openness from the government to the workers. However, after some times, the health of ministries have announced that they cannot apply the increasement in the on-call duty allowance because the failure of the ministries' health to roll the waktu bekerja berlainan shift. This also broke the doctors' trust and betrayed the promise that was made to the doctors. Then, there is an intervention from the Malaysian Medical Association, MMA, that they are requested members of parliament to discuss the on-call allowance for doctors because there is no update from the ministries since then. It was more than 10 years unchanged, the allowance, and this brought up the ethical issues of justice. Then, the impact of the intervention, the Ministry of Health started a program to hire over 4,000 doctors. Yet, Dr. Kalwinder Singh Khaira still highlighting the problems with allowance and permanent employment. This brought up the ethical issues of providing healthcare staff with sufficient assistance and also structural responsibility.
Hi, my name is Aisha binti JUSOH, my metric number 302318. Now, I will discuss a global ethical issue in the medical sector focusing on the pay dispute involving resident doctors in England as reported by the BBC in the article Why are resident doctors striking and how much are they paid? At the center of this issue is an ethical dilemma between the government's financial limitation and its moral responsibility to fairly compensate medical professionals while ensuring patient safety within the NHS. On the doctor's side, represented by the BMA, resident doctors are fully qualified practitioners who make up nearly half of all doctors in England. Many have over 10 years of training and experience and work in critical areas such as accident and emergency and general practice services. Despite this, their real-term pay has fallen by around 20% since 2008, mainly because wages have failed to keep pace with inflation measured using the RPI. This ongoing dissatisfaction has resulted in 14 strikes since March 2023. On the government side, it argues that resident doctors have already received nearly 30% cumulative pay increases over the past 3 years, making them the highest paid group among public sector workers. As a result, the government has ruled out further pay rises and instead proposed non-pay solution, particularly expanding specialist training posts within 4,000 additional posts by 2028. However, the BMA has rejected this offer, arguing that it does not address the core issue of pay erosion. This leaves the ethical conflict unsolved, as the NHS must balance patient care during winter pressure against fairness, justice, and the long-term sustainability of the medical workforce.
Now, I will compare ethical issues faced by doctors in Malaysia and the United Kingdom. On the left, looking at Malaysia, doctors are facing challenges related to unfair on-call allowances in the public sector. Although the Ministry of Health promised higher wages, these promises were not fully delivered, causing issues of transparency, equity, and trust. The government has focused on hiring more doctors to expand the workforce, but problems with pay, permanent employment, and overall welfare remain unresolved. This failure to honor commitment has eroded doctors' confidence in institutional accountability and has demoralized healthcare workers. On the right, in the United Kingdom, resident doctors are experiencing a decline in real terms pay, even after several nominal increases. They face an ethical dilemma where financial constraints conflict with the need for fair compensation for skilled medical labor. Industrial actions have shown ongoing distrust in government claims that doctors are adequately rewarded. To maintain responsibility within their healthcare system, the UK government has implemented non-financial measures such as increasing pools in specialized fields and covering professional expenses. Despite these efforts, doctors continue to struggle with fairness, integrity, and ethical responsibility in their work environment.
Ethical issues in healthcare do not occur in isolation. The challenges faced by healthcare professionals in Malaysia and the United Kingdom reflect broader issues of responsibility, fairness and accountability within healthcare system. In this section, ethical theories are applied to examine these challenges more clearly. Deontological ethics is an ethical theory proposed by Immanuel Kant which focuses on moral duties and obligations rather than the outcome of action. According to this theory, actions are considered ethical when individuals or institutions fulfill their moral responsibilities such as being honest, responsible and respectful. Utilitarianism is an ethical theory introduced by Jeremy Bentham and further developed by John Stuart Mill. This theory evaluates action based on their overall consequences, particularly whether they produce the greatest good for the greatest number of people, focusing on maximizing overall happiness and well-being while reducing harm and suffering for the majority. Justice and fairness theory, proposed by John Rawls, focuses on the fair distribution of benefit, burden, and opportunities within a society. According to this theory, individuals should be treated justly based on their contribution and the responsibilities they carry, emphasizing the creation of social and economic conditions that ensure equality and protect the less advantaged member of society.
Hello everyone, my name is AUNI ARIF and my matric number is 302333. For this section, I explain why these ethical theories are suitable for analyzing the issue faced by doctors in Malaysia and the UK. First, deontological ethics focus on moral duty, honesty and keeping promises. This theory is relevant because healthcare authorities make commitments about fair pay, allowances and working conditions but did not fully deliver on them. When these promises are broken, doctors feel demoralized and lose trust in the system. From a deontological point of view, this is unethical because duties and professional obligations are not being respected regardless of the outcome. Next, utilitarianism looks at the overall consequences of these policies. Underpayment and overwork don't just affect doctors but also patients and the healthcare system as a whole. These issues lead to a burnout, safety risk, treatment delays, and added pressure on hospitals. Because the harm cost is greater than the benefits, utilitarianism helps show why the current situation is ethically problematic. Lastly, justice and fairness theory, introduced by Rawls, focus on the fair distribution of pay, workload, and recognition. In both Malaysia and the UK, doctors carry heavy responsibilities but receive stagnant or unequal compensation. This highlights structural injustice where the burden placed on doctors is not matched by fair rewards. Overall, these three theories work well together because they explain broken duties, harmful outcomes, and unfair treatment, giving us a clear ethical framework to evaluate the issues.
Hi, my name is SYAHIRAH with matrix number 302338. To conclude, this study highlights that wage theft and systemic-level exploitation remain serious ethical issues in the medical sector, both Malaysia and globally. Despite strong public recognition of healthcare system by Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia and National Health Service during COVID-19 pandemic, many medical professionals continue to face unfair remuneration, unpaid overtime, and unsustainable working conditions. These practices have undermined doctors' dignity, motivation, and well-being, while also threatening patient safety and quality of care. Furthermore, the comparison between Malaysia and United Kingdom shows that although policy frameworks differ, both systems suffer from similar ethical failures, including excessive workloads, rugged commitments, and weak accountability. Viewed through deontological, utilitarian, and justice perspective, these failures represent a serious breach of ethical governance. Ultimately, underpayment is not merely an administrative issue, but a systemic ethical failure that threatens long-term healthcare sustainability and public trust. Next, let's discuss the ethical lessons. First, professional integrity cannot thrive within an unethical system. Although doctors enter the profession with strong moral purpose and commitment to patient welfare, persistent underpayment, unpaid overtime, and exploitation gradually erodes their motivation and well-being. When ethical dedication is met with systemic injustice, Doctors experience a burnout and moral exhaustion, which compromises both their professional integrity and the quality of patient care. Second, unfair remuneration practices lead to the erosion of trust and institutional integrity. Fair wages and allowances are not merely administrative decisions but moral and fiduciary duties of healthcare authorities. Repeated broken promises and lack of accountability undermine doctors' trust in healthcare institutions and governments, driving many to seek opportunities in the private sector or abroad. This loss of skilled professionals weakens public healthcare system and threatens long-term sustainability. And finally, healthcare ethics must be recognized as a shared societal responsibility. The normalization of wage separation reflects broader governance failures that require collective resistance. Ethical healthcare can only be sustained when institutions, policymakers, and society work together to protect medical professionals' rights, uphold justice, and preserve public trust in the healthcare system.